And we get, I see visions in the world around me that others do not. So great for mushrooms if you're, psychedelic mushrooms. A lot of these seem like they have to do with being on drugs, to be honest. I periodically slip into a catatonic state, staring off into the distance for long stretches of time. Yeah, I see an altered version of reality, with my mind convincing itself that things are true even in the face of overwhelming evidence to the contrary. My mind is slipping away, and my intelligence seems to wax and wane. I take offense to that one. And then I am constantly scratching at unseen fungal infestations.
I hope that's not one of them.
That's in a bad state, yeah. I mean, if the trip's not going well.
Welcome to Monsters and Multiclass, your Dungeons & Dragons fix. I'm Ellie.
I'm Jared Bornagle.
And I'm Will Meldon.
And we'll be hanging out with you for a while to talk about anything and everything D&D related. On this episode, we are taking a look at Zuggtmoy, the last demon lord of our coverage, and we're finally done with all of them. But yes, the demon queen of fungi, lady of rot and decay. Before diving further, this episode's probably going to have some Out of the Abyss spoilers. She's somewhat part of that campaign. There's a whole chapter dedicated to her. So we'll most likely talk about that as we've played it, and it's kind of hard to talk about some of these demon lords without that. So if you're in that campaign or think you will be soon, this might spoil some things.
We could also do like a, before we talk about it, be like, this is the spoiler part. And then...
That's not how we do things.
Yeah, we could do that, but we won't.
Okay.
No, I'm saying I don't think we could do that. We jump around so much. We go off on so many tangents. We talk about things in just out of order. It's just not going to happen. It's just going to come up in little bits and pieces throughout the episode.
Okay. Well then...
We could try.
Maybe
we
just
We'll
come back to this episode
Jared.
once you finish that game. After
It's also a very old campaign at this point.
Yeah.
Anyways, yes, Zuggtmoy is the demon queen of fungi, lady of rot and decay. She's a giant mushroom person. She infects people with fungal spores, takes them over with mind control. It's crazy stuff. She's an alien creature whose only desire is to infect the living with spores, transforming them into her mindless servants and eventually into decomposing hosts for mushrooms, molds, and other fungi that she spawns. So yeah, she wants the entire world, the entire multiverse to just be covered in her spores, in her image, same as every other demon lord. I guess that's a theme.
It took us this long to figure it out, but yeah, there's a theme here.
Yeah, there's a theme.
Wait a second. I think these guys are up to no good.
It's almost all like they have god complexes or something. Huh.
What's going on?
Utterly inhuman, Zuggtmoy can mold her fungoid form into an approximation of humanoid shape, including the skeletal thin figure depicted in grimoires and ancient art. Also the art that's associated that will be showing on the screen probably at this point. Indeed, much of her appearance and manner of that of her servants is a soulless mockery of mortal life and its many facets. She does have cultists. Most of them follow her unwittingly, though, infected by her spores in some degree, where they might just be whispering little quiet things under the subconscious, just making them act in ways beneficial to Zuggtmoy or completely have taken over their mind, and they are just total thralls under her control, and everything in between. So when Zuggtmoy is around, it's that type of adventure. The classic, who's the thing? Test their blood. I don't know. Have you guys not seen The Thing?
I actually haven't
I've seen The Thing. It's
really
awesome.
Oh.
Don't watch the new one.
I wouldn't.
I've never seen the new one. Yeah, watch the original. It's a solid movie.
I was waiting for it to be at the drive-in. It seemed fitting. Yeah, seemed like a good drive-in movie. Anyways.
Right. So her stat block. You just dive into that. Challenge rating 23, armor class of 18, 304 hit points. So a bit on the lower end in terms of AC and hit points for a Demon Lord, which I think is fitting. Though she hits like a fucking truck. It's like, it seems so weird, and we'll get to it just of how hard she hits, but we'll come back to that. Strength of 22, which is a +6, Dex of +2, Con of +4, Intelligence of +5, Wisdom of +4, and Charisma of +7. So solid stats across the board, worst one being Dex at 15. Saving throws Dex +9, Con +11, and Wisdom +11 with a skill of Perception +11. Nothing too exciting there. Damage resistance the same as every other Demon Lord and Demon, Cold, Fire, and Lightning, and immunities of Poison, Bludgeoning, Piercing, and Slashing. That is non-magical. Condition immunities of Charmed, Exhausted, Frightened, and Poisoned. Has True Sight out to 120 feet, Passive Perception of 21, knows all languages, and has Telepathy out to 120 feet. It's like all that section's like the same on every single Demon Lord, with the one exception of Orcus. Anyways, Zuggtmoy has innate spellcasting. Her spellcasting ability is Charisma of a spell save DC of 22, so very high. Innately cast the following spells at will, meaning at any time, not specifically at our friend Will here. She can detect magic, locate. I've been like sitting on a joke for 3 years. Every time we do it, it pops into my head. It's like, damn it, it's a bad joke, but I'm just gonna say it today.
I'm glad you
if
did.
it would ever come out.
Yeah. Alright, so she can do Detect Magic, Locate Animals or Plants, and then Ray of Sickness. 3 times a day each to spell Magic, Ensnaring, Strike, Entangle, and Plant Growth. And once a day each Etherealness and Teleport. Unlike Yinogu spells, I think Zuggtmoy spells are very fitting for her. Yeah, I think they all have Detect Magic, which feels, I don't know, whatever. I don't see that being used too much, but locate animals and plants, Ray of Sickness. Of course, she's gonna have all that.
Right.
The Ray of Sickness, since it's an innate spellcasting, she can't upcast it, and it's a level 1 spell. And on a hit, it does 2d8 poison damage, and then they can become poisoned until the end of your next turn. That's it. Like, that seems like such a waste because it doesn't specify, upcast it at this level or something like that.
Yeah, using a whole action for that is going to be pretty difficult to justify just to poison someone. I mean, poison's pretty rough, but, 2d8 probably fail that 22 DC Constitution save, but there's a lot of ways to get rid of poisoned, especially if you know you're going to fight Zuggtmoy.
At higher levels. Yes, at higher levels. And she has other more passive ways to apply poison, not in her stat block, but in what she's going to have around her and with layer actions. So we'll obviously get to that. Spell magic, all Demon Lords have to spell magic, just fitting for these really tough boss fights, way to just end strong effects. And then Ensnaring Strike, Entangle, and Plant Growth. Super fitting for Zuggtmoy. Again, though, just a little rough to dedicate an entire action to these, because they're all level 1 spells.
Ensnaring Strike is a bonus action.
Oh, it is? Okay.
Yeah, so that one I could actually see getting a lot of use.
You're right, because, she gets 4 attacks, yeah. And so, she can only do it once per turn because it's a bonus action, but yeah.
Well, it's... Okay. And it's concentration.
And then add it, yeah.
Yeah, so it's the next time you hit a creature with a weapon attack before the spell ends, a writhing mass of thorny vines or fungal vines, if you want it to be, appear at the point of impact, and the target must succeed on a strength saving throw or be restrained, and while restrained by the spell, the target takes 1d6 piercing damage at the start of each of its turns, and you can make an action to try and break out of it. So, I mean, the fact that it's concentration, I think, is a little bit difficult to justify, but I could see that getting some
Does she have other concentration spells?
Entangle.
Oh, it is. Okay. Yeah, that's the one where it's a 20-foot square, and anything in there needs to make a strength save or become restrained.
Right. So
they could use their action to break the restrained.
So either way, if you're trying to restrain people, I think you've got 2 options. You're going to be using your concentration for the same purpose, which is restraining.
Right. The one is a bonus action you could do when you hit. The other is entangle.
Right.
Is an action. Is a full action.
Yeah.
I
knew what you meant, but
I was reading something to move on to the next thing, and in my brain just kind of went on autopilot and didn't say the right words. Yeah, it's an action.
Yeah, and restrained is really strong just because that does mean that melee attacks against that creature have advantage and they can't move. So all in all, it's one of the better effects in my opinion. And
it's all attacks. It's not just melee. You're thinking of prone.
Oh, okay. Yes, you're right. So definitely pretty rough. I still feel like you'd probably start with Ensnaring Strike, and like once you're out of those, it's like, okay, I'll drop some Entangles. But either way, you've got options.
Yep. And then teleport. Most Demon Lords, if not all of them, have teleport. And with Yinogu, we were talking where like doesn't seem like a lot of use out of them. With that Zuggtmoy, I could see using teleport. I could see Zuggtmoy choosing to tactically retreat, regroup, that sort of stuff.
Yeah, because even if the Demon Lords don't lose much by dying, they probably can lose something. I mean, it seems like there's a reason Demon Lords don't just show up on the material plane. It takes some effort, generally, to get there. So if they were on...
Yeah, for sure. It's very hard to.
Right, so if they were on the material plane, I could very much see Zuggtmoy, as well as a couple others, Fraz, Blue as well on that list, but a couple who would be saying, okay, you know what, I lost this fight, but I put in a lot of effort to get here, and I'm not about to throw it all away.
Right, yeah, traditionally the Demon Lords need to be summoned by their cultists. Or in the sense of Out of the Abyss, it's like there was one kind of action just opened up a portal to the Abyss and they all came through. But they usually can't do it by themselves. They need a more impact the material plane in a way to get people to summon them in.
What about Etherealness, though?
I was going to say, yeah, it's a little weird, but at the same time, I could see being fitting. This is when you pop into the ethereal plane and it lasts for 8 hours. You remain in the border ethereal for the duration, and so you could kind of like move through your plane and other creatures and walls and objects unimpeded and still see things. I feel like it kind of fits that just sort of weird mystery vibe she could kind of get anywhere, sort of in the sense that rot and fungus and mold can just kind of creep their way in. That's kind of the flavor I see of why she has that.
That's fair. I was trying to come at it from the angle of like spores and like spores being spread, which is what you're saying as well. Yeah. And like I could see it there if you flavor it as she turns into spores. It mostly makes sense until you talk about trying to, go through walls, which spores can't pass through solid objects, but Zuggtmoy's spores can because Zuggtmoy.
Okay, and then she has 3-a-day legendary resistances. If she fails a saving throw, she can choose to succeed instead. Magic resistance has advantage on saving throws against spells and other magical effects. Very typical for all the Demon Lords. And then magic weapons. All her weapon stacks are magical. Moving on to actions, Zuggtmoy gets 4 multi-attacks, where she makes 4 pseudopod attacks. The pseudopod is a plus 13 to hit and reach 10 feet. On a hit, it does 2d8 plus 6 bludgeoning damage, plus 2d8 poison damage. So that's an average of 24 damage. She does 4 of these. When I said she hits hard, her just like base, if she takes multi-attack, is 96 damage.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
It's just a lot. Yeah. It's like outpacing most of the other Demon Lords. And again, she's not supposed to be like the hard hitter. This is the one where she's like the spellcaster, the manipulator behind the scenes, because she has a bunch of other things to do with her actions, like really strong things.
Yeah,
but this damage is so high, it's hard to pass it up.
My guess is the reason is they're making an assumption that you have found a way to resist poison damage or completely negate poison damage, because at medium, like mid-tier, that's usually easy to do if you are prepared for the fight. If you're not prepared for the fight, always a different story. But that's my only guess is there was some thought around there, or there was zero thought around it. And
there was I'm just gonna go with that. There was zero thought. What gets me is like pseudopod has always been like a cute word to me. It's like, oh, it's a noodle. It's a noodle bapping you on the snoot or whatever. And it does more damage than friggin' Heart Cleaver. Heart Cleaver.
Baphomet's great axe, yeah.
It's been like 5 minutes. I can start yelling about that again.
Yeah. Or Yinogu's 3-headed flail.
Yeah, and this is like a pool noodle, just kind of reaching out and whapping you.
I think that for a Demon Lord, that is probably dismissive of the destruction that could be caused by this pseudopod, but I do understand where you're coming from. A weapon that is specific to a Demon Lord should do more damage than the rot and fungus that a I guess, pseudopod can be made of. It just doesn't really seem to make sense. I could almost see, though it would complicate things with 4 attacks, I could almost see there being a save associated with the poison damage in order to make that feel a bit more fitting. But with 4 pseudopod attacks, again, that would slow down things a lot. So probably wouldn't go that direction myself.
Right. But yeah, she hits hard. That's not her only actions. She also has infestation spores. This is not part of multi-attack. So if she does this, she gives up her multi-attack, the pseudopods. She can do this 3 times a day. Zuggtmoy releases spores that burst out in a cloud that fills a 20-foot radius sphere centered on her, and it lingers for 1 minute. Any flesh and blood creature in the cloud when it appears, or that enters it later, must succeed on a DC 19 Constitution saving throw. On a success, the creature can't be infected by these spores for 24 hours. On a fail, the creature is infected with the disease called the Spores of Zuggtmoy, and also gains a random form of madness to determine on her madness table. We'll cover that at the end. That lasts until the creature's cured of the disease or just dies. When infected in this way, the creature can't be reinfected, and it must repeat the saving throw at the end of every 24 hours, ending the infection on a success. On a failure, the infected creature's body is slowly taken over by fungal spore growth, and after 3 failed saves, the creature dies and is reanimated as a spore servant if it's a type of creature that can. And there's a spore servant section in the monster manual under myconids. Yeah, myconids. Said that right. About what those are about. And it's like you become like a thrall to whatever's made you the spore servant, and you lose your character. It's kind of like rising as a zombie. This is just a fungal version of that.
Yeah.
So that was a lot. This is a weird one. So it takes no damage. Like, it doesn't, like, do damage to you or anything. And it takes, every 24 hours, you make a new save. If you pass one of these saves at any point in time, you're good. Nothing happens. The spores don't take hold, or if they already have taken hold, they, the infestation just ends. But you have to fail 4 times in a row. And then you get made into a spore servant. I don't really see using this in combat, taking up your whole action to like do this to the party during a fight.
I could, for the sake of flavor, because that is important, and it could very well be like she recognizes these are strong creatures and says, hey, I'm going to shoot my shot. Maybe I can infect 1 or 2 of them, and they become my thralls. That's pretty awesome. No reason not to.
Well, I think the mind control spores, the next one, is that. That's a better option.
But that's, I guess, shorter term, kind of. This would be like if she was trying to infect and leave and, make a permanent effect here. Now, all of that said, I still think even if it does happen to the party, they're going to have a pretty easy time getting rid of this. Getting rid of a disease is not hard. Lesser Restoration will do it. That is a 2nd level spell. Not impossible here.
Right.
But if there are, say, NPCs in your party, it doesn't specify that you are infected either.
Right.
Which I think makes it pretty scary in that regard. Just the fact that at least 24 hours could go by without the infected person being aware of it, and then maybe weird things start to happen. Oh, you know what? They get the madness. The madness, I guess, would kind of make it at least obvious that something's messed up.
Maybe, yeah. It depends how subtle it is or not. Out of the Abyss use this heavily. A lot, and I mean a lot, of things, NPCs that you guys dealt with and deal with in Out of the Abyss are currently under this effect. And like they're fighting this off and fighting off the mind control and turning into thralls and suffering madness. One of the companions that come with you is the drow. I forgot his name. But there was that like disgraced drow that was with you guys. That was his whole thing. He was being infected by these spores.
Yeah, so that's a good way to use it.
They kept going back to that well. It's like, and as keep in mind as they're dealing with this NPC, he's secretly infected by Zuggtmoy's spores, so make sure you play up this madness trait that he has, and if they come back later, he's going to turn into a terrible fungal zombie and kill everybody. That happened like 7 times.
And you know what? As a player, you don't even realize it. It's like, fool me once, fool me twice, keep on fooling me because I'm a player character and I don't recognize this stuff.
Yeah, so this action seems more to codify out-of-combat stuff. In the same sense as like how Orcus's stat block has things to... It talks about being able to cast Animate Dead at higher levels. And it's like, all right, that's not happening in combat. It's just like a way to say, yeah, he's going to have a bunch of strong undead around him. This is the specifics of how Zuggtmoy infests people and turns them into thralls.
Now, you're spot on. I really can't think of a scenario where this would be a reasonable thing to use against PCs, unless you really were just going for the flavor of it, where you're not, because not every single challenge is supposed to be, and then I have the ability to take away my player's character. Like, nobody even wants that. Nobody's asking for that ability. But if the players are aware of the threat of it and realize that if they ignore it, then, you know, it's a problem, it could be a quest generator, maybe. If it's a low-level party who stumbles across Zuggtmoy and they don't have Lesser Restoration, they don't have any poison-curing abilities, then...
No paladins.
Right.
Because they could just do 5 points of land hands.
Yes. I'm not saying it's not easy to get rid of, for what it's worth.
Right.
But, if they don't have the setup to get rid of this disease easily, then it could be used as like a, you know, not trying to start a fight, but wandering along wherever the party wanders, and boom, they get spored, and 2 of them fail. Well, now you got to go find a way to cure it, and you can only do that by getting favor from this person, and blah, 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 blah.
Right. Yeah, they have 3 days. And
then they just succeed on the second one, and they're like, oh, never mind, we don't have to complete
I was
this
going to
quest.
say, if you want to use this as a plot point for your party and things to happen to your party, I would modify, take away... everyone gets 1 save, and if they fail, it's just going to happen in 3 days. And like the paladin's 5 points of land hands won't heal it. Lesser restoration won't heal it. Like here's like seek out cures. You have 3 days. That sort of thing.
It's always much more interesting. I was trying to figure out a way to do it within Raw, but there's no way I'd run it this way. I would totally say like you need to get this special water from the well of antifungals. You know, just. the CLR water and remove the fungus.
The well of Yumtugza.
Is that just Zuggtmoy backwards?
It's my butchered attempt at it, yeah.
Okay. Yumtugz.
Yumtuguz.
Yeah.
Yumtuguz. There we go.
So, yeah, anyways, make some type of MacGuffin that they need in order to combine with the disease curing. Or if they don't have any options, whatever, just give it to them for free. You drink from the water. Congrats, you're cured. And it was very difficult to get there. Great.
Right. Or again,
just skip over the whole thing. Just say they're fine.
I'm oversimplifying because people don't want to hear me make an entire adventure on the spot for the next 10 minutes. But I'm giving broad concepts, Will.
My personal take is don't infect your players. Infect the NPCs they love. And then turn them into mushrooms. And then you don't have to feel bad about
it. Don't tell your party. Don't tell the NPCs. Turn them into mushrooms. Don't even roll for it. Just turn them into mushrooms.
Yep. Like I said, half of Out of the Abyss. All right. The other action, Mind Control Spores. This is, again, another completely standalone action. This is a recharge 5 or 6, so she starts the fight with it. If she uses it at the start of every turn, rolls a d6 on a 5 or 6, she gets it's back. She has the option to use it again. Zuggtmoy releases spores that burst out in a cloud that fills a 20-foot radius sphere centered on her, and it lingers for 1 minute. Humanoids and beasts in the cloud when it appears, or that enter it later, must succeed on a DC 19 Wisdom saving throw. On a successful save, the creature can't be infected by these spores for 24 hours. On a failed save, the creature is infected with the disease called Influence of the Zuggtmoy for 24 hours. While infected, the creature is charmed by her and can't be reinfected by these spores. And then we'll just jump right into it. She has a reaction, Protective Thrall. When Zuggtmoy is hit by an attack, one creature within 5 feet of her that is charmed by her must use its reaction to be hit by the attack instead.
So, going back to previous, here's a reason why you wouldn't use Mind Control Spores if the party's immune to charm in any way. You know, elves or fae or whatever creatures, because it does specify humanoid. Whereas the Infestation Spores actually just says any flesh and blood creature in the cloud. It does not specify humanoids. So just a small reason why you might use that over this.
Sure. Makes sense. But this one's pretty rough.
Yeah.
So a lot of times we say charm's not that great. This is one of the situations where it really is, because then you can't attack Zuggtmoy. And it lasts for 24 hours. You don't get a resave or anything like that. It doesn't say anything that cures disease, which is that really low bar, gets rid of this. It's just if you fail, you're infected and charmed by her for 24 hours.
Yeah, there's that Bard ability that is always kind of hilariously bad, where they can spend their entire action to give somebody
counter charm.
Oh, but that's only if they get to remake the save, which in this case they wouldn't. So that
they don't. Yeah, you'd have to know what's coming. That's why the Bard one sucks. You have to take your action to start counter charming, and then anything within 30 feet of you in that next round gets like advantage on the charm save. It's like you have to know what's coming.
I hate that ability. Why did they not make that an optional switch in Tasha's? I
don't know. It sucks.
Okay. We'll talk about it in the Bard deconstruction.
Right. The and this lasts a minute, the Spores, so it's a recharge 5 or 6, and it bursts in the cloud to fill 20-foot radius sphere centered on her, and then it lingers for a minute. So you could have the entire battlefield, in theory, covered in these Spores. She could do it, then, next round, doesn't get it back, does her 4 pseudopod attacks and deals 96 damage to somebody. And then the next round gets Mind Control Spores back, moves to another point, Spores again, and now you got 2 spheres that are still up.
Yeah, and while it does specify that it comes from her, we'll get to this later with the Lair actions, there is a way that she can kind of do it wherever she wants on the battlefield.
Right.
Which makes it even scarier.
Right. And she even has a legendary actions that plays off of this, Exert Will. One creature charmed by Zuggtmoy that she can see must use its reaction to move up to its speed as she directs, or to make a weapon attack against a target that she designates. So she can make people who have failed the Mind Control Spores attack others as a legendary action. She gets 3 of legendary reactions like everyone else, does it in between other people's turns. So 3 times she can make somebody... Well... Okay, it uses the reaction, so somewhat limited there, but it does not use her reaction.
I also forgot how hard breaking Charmed is. But, I'll get to that in a second. But overall, I mean, once you are Charmed, you are totally screwed. And it's a DC 19 Wisdom saving throw, which is pretty high. Anything that goes over, I'd say 17, is in that territory of, oh my, this could be very bad. And... no repeat save, 24 hours is quite a long time. I mean, you're basically taking somebody out of the fight. And if you get the paladin, the fighter, the barbarian, oh god, the barbarian. I mean, just the damage that she can cause with them is absurd.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's like on their turn, they can attack other things.
Sure.
If they're around, which is, one of the kind of the big flaws or weaknesses of charm. But in this case, again, it's not a huge one, because she's the thing you want to kill, because that's going to end stuff showing up and everyone getting infected and things like that, and they just can't for 24 hours. They just can't attack her.
Yeah, I think that's probably an important thing to say about Charmed. Usually when we talk about it, it's in a bit of a vacuum, but Charmed is okay if you really, really, really need to attack that thing.
Mm-hmm.
So,
you could kind of rules lawyer the charmed condition. So a charmed creature can't attack the charmer or target the charmer with harmful abilities or magical effects. So can you AoE that has Zuggtmoy in it?
I would say no, not at all.
Raw, yes. You're not targeting. Rules as intended. Not so sure on that one, but...
Yeah, I'd go with you can't Like that's like saying, oh, well, like the idea of charm to me is that you view that thing as an ally or just like generally as a friend to some capacity. Even as a neutral acquaintance, even if we went that far, if you're dropping a fireball, you're probably going to be like, I'm going to do that a little bit to the right so I don't get that random child on the street in my fireball. You can't be like, well, I didn't target them, so I didn't kill them. It's like, no, you harmed them. You intentionally harmed them. You're going to jail. You can't just attack random children. It's really messed up.
Crap! We wrote the murder laws. We didn't consider hand grenades. You're free to go, sir. Yes, you can have the grenades back.
So, rules is written, maybe. I guess you're right. It could be rules lawyered. But just common sense says, stop that. Get some help. You don't need to win every situation. Rules lawyering is okay in some. This isn't it.
Right.
So what I was going to say is that Charmed is quite difficult to get rid of. I have found 2 spells where you can do that. Greater Restoration, a 5th level spell, and Dispel Evil and Good, which is also a 5th level spell, and it has to be cast on yourself. Yeah, it's not even on somebody else, and it's concentration. So Dispel Evil and Good, while usually not taken in the first place, is quite a cost in order to get rid of this.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's worth it, but...
I'm sorry. I haven't used the spell in a decade. That's how long 5e's been out, right? So with Dispel Evil and Good, you cast it on yourself. It lasts a minute, and it's concentration. And you can end the spell early by using either of the following special functions. One of them is Break Enchantment. As an action, you touch a creature you can reach that is charmed or frightened or possessed, blah, 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 and they are no longer charmed, frightened, or possessed. So,
right,
that is different.
It is.
So, yeah, like
there's ways around it, but it's...
I feel like you can... So this is a disease. It doesn't go out of its ways.
It's
not this one.
It does not say it's a disease.
Oh.
The other one is a disease.
No. The creature is infected with a disease called the influence of Zuggtmoy.
Oh.
So that makes me think that, it's a lesser restoration to get rid of it. Which is still it still sucks.
Or a paladin's 5 points of land hands.
It's an action. Let's just say it's an action and a resource.
Yeah.
That is actually a really, really good way to get your paladin not to nuke Zuggtmoy.
If they're having to spend their action curing a disease from people, that's true.
Yeah, and if a DC 19 wisdom save, she's probably going to get a lot of people in this 20-foot radius sphere. That's a big area. So I could definitely see getting like 2 or 3 members of the party, and it's like, all right away, they cure it on one, and then somebody still is going to be under this effect for an entire round.
Or they get the paladin.
Yeah.
Now, who cares that you've got your lay on hands? I guess, no, I take that back.
No, they could use it. Yep. They could still use it.
Nothing saying that they couldn't.
Interestingly, though, once you cure it, you're actually up again for this disease, as far as I'm reading it.
I agree.
Because it's not a successful save.
Yes.
Right.
So, that's huge in the action economy. If you've burned multiple actions to get rid of this, and again, from the paladin. So regardless of how it plays out, it is obviously a little bit tricky rules-wise. So from that perspective, like, know what this effect does and how you can cure it before you run this combat. Because this is one that I totally, if I was a DM, I would read it once and I'd go, oh, that's simple enough. And then we'd all sit down and start playing and you'd be like, oh, well, I can cure diseases. Can I cure this? And I'm like, well, you're charmed though. And how does that work? And, whatever. But it's like,
right.
It's here. It makes sense. It's even balanced, I'd say, towards being an action resource. But if you're reading it immediately, you might think, well, no, this is supposed to be strong. It's their strong thing. Why can you remove it with 5 points on lay on hand? Because you're not getting the smite off.
Right.
What's funny is because it lingers, you could totally bait the paladin into lay on hands next turn. All right. Nope. Roll a wisdom save first.
Yep.
Crap.
Right. Also, a Zuggtmoy fight. This would be one I'd let the party get NPC helpers with them.
So you can turn them into mushrooms?
Yeah, to turn them into mushrooms and mind control thralls.
Yeah, that part must be the worst. If you have a beloved NPC who is doing the protective thrall aspect, like if your barbarian is jumping in front of the attack to protect Zuggtmoy, everyone's like, ha ha ha, we're all having a good time. I get to hit my barbarian one time. That's kind of funny. If it's the beloved NPC, it's sad. It's just painful.
Right.
I would guess. Have we had a beloved NPC?
Yeah, definitely not.
Yeah, we've had a ton. We were obsessed with Stool.
That's true. if you made Stool jump in front of an attack against Zuggtmoy, I would have reached across the table and hit you.
Just picture Just picture the look on your player's face when they're like, "Yeah, natural 20," and you're just like grinning like a mad. Guess who you just decapitated?
No, he didn't even have a head.
And I thought you guys liked Darendelle and Shushar.
Yeah, for sure.
Jim Jar.
No, I actually...
There's some good NPCs in Out of the Abyss.
There was some good NPCs.
And then, we talked about in the Yenogu episode, Papa Tucker. That actually wasn't his name. That was like the big joke. That was that was the name of his company, but his name was not Tucker. It was like Bartholomew.
I like how we're making in-campaign references with an episode we had last week for most people. So, if that made no sense to you, too bad. It's our show. That's what you all get for not watching the monster episodes anyways.
So another take with the NPCs that maybe not so much like the single beloved NPC is you hire help, or part of a quest is you get a king agrees to send 10 of his elites guard with you to help take down Zuggtmoy. And then immediately they are all turned against you. That sort of stuff.
Oh, that's so good. And that really encompasses my favorite part of D&D combat is that the first round or two, the party always, if done correctly, feels like they are up against the wall. They feel like they are absolutely screwed. And going into it with that, oh yeah, we've got 10 guards. We're good. Don't even sweat it, guys. And then 3/4 of them just flip on the first turn. It instantly sets a tone of, we either need to get out of here or this is going to be a very, very hard fight.
Right. And to just thoroughness for finishing this, she also has a legendary action called Attack, where she makes a pseudopod attack.
Another one of those.
Yep.
That just sucks.
Just a quick, 72 additional damage per turn if you use all pseudopod attacks. Yeah, it's kind of funny because the Exert will, most likely, unless you get the Barbarian or some really heavy hitter, is not going to do as much damage as the pseudopod attack, but the Exert will is a power play. That is saying, I control you. I am taking your reaction and making you attack a friend. Deal with it.
Right. And also has range.
Yeah, it's got the range to it, and you can get people stuck places that they just can't really leave from.
You're saying if you just move them even?
Yeah.
Yeah, and this is one that it doesn't specify. It's not one of those they can't harm themselves, right? If for example, if you made a and Daring Strike Plant Growth, is that the one that does damage? None of these do damage. If you had some acid pools in your Zuggtmoy fight, could you have a charmed creature run into those?
That's mean.
I know.
Don't know. It sounds like you could. You any spell that deals with like suggestion and things like that, dealing with charming, all really clearly say if you can do that stuff or not.
Yeah, now I'm just imagining...
Well, if you can't do it, it says it.
Right.
This one doesn't say anything, so...
I'm just imagining the fighter just running up to the wizard and wrapping their arms around them and just jumping into the pool of poison or spores or whatever it is. That actually could be one way to use it, though it says make a weapon attack against the target that she designates. So that's really all you can do. But you could run into... She could have that infected person run into there, no problem. But bringing somebody else would be difficult. Oh well. Still funny.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, that's the stat block.
Yeah, a lot to work with there. That's definitely one that I would say is a read a couple of times beforehand to make sure you understand everything. Because if you're like me, you didn't. I read that before this and definitely did not grasp every nuance.
Right.
For the layer actions, we have just to talk about Zuggtmoy's lair in general, is on the realm of Shadakla, and she just has a palace there. Consists of 24 mushrooms of pale yellow and rancid brown. These massive fungi are some of the largest in existence. They're surrounded by a field of acidic puffballs and poisonous vapors. The mushrooms are all interconnected by bridges of shelf fungi, and countless chambers have been hollowed out inside their rubbery, fibrous stalks. So exactly what you'd expect from the mushroom queen is just mushrooms everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect. For the layer actions, as usual, it's on initiative count 20. Zuggtmoy can take a layer action to cause one of the following effects. She can't use the same effect 2 rounds in a row. We've got Zuggtmoy causes 4 gas spores or violet fungi, see the monster manual, to appear in unoccupied spaces that she chooses within the layer, and they vanish within 1 hour.
Have you looked up gas spores?
Yes, I
They're
did.
something else.
They weren't very high challenge rating,
No,
but
this is one of those weird misleading ones. Like this almost like feels shoehorned into a monster stat block when it shouldn't be. Because it's challenge rating 1/2. But so they have 1 hit point and 10 speed, 10 foot of movement in the form of fly. But they have Death Burst. The gas spore explodes when it drops to 0 hit points. Each creature within 20 feet must succeed on a DC 15 con save or take 3d6 poison damage and become infected with the disease on a failed save. Spores invade an affected creature's system, killing the creature in a number of hours equal to 1d12 plus the creature's con score, unless the disease is removed. And half the time, the creature becomes poisoned for the rest of the duration. After the creature dies, it sprouts 2d4 tiny gas spores that grow to full size in 7 days. It also has a touch attack where if it manages to hit, it's only +0 to hit, so it's unlikely, but if it manages to hit, it also imparts those spores.
yeah. So I think the big thing that you're going to get out of this is probably the 3d6 poison damage, and then the threat of everyone dying. Same deal with like the NPCs. If you get this on them, they might die, which is always a thing.
Yeah. This is what I wouldn't tell your party what's going on.
No.
Like, this blows up and there's this puff of spores and like, oh, roll me a con save. And you roll a 10. And it's like, okay. And then you just move on. You just leave it because nothing immediately happens other than the damage. Maybe they think it's you're rolling the con save for the damage.
Something that I actually just realized, and this is partially related because it does infect you with a disease. Paladins are immune to diseases at 3rd level. I thought it was higher level than that.
Oh.
So
it's 3rd level to become just immune to disease?
Yes, just immune to disease.
Oh, man, there goes like all of Zuggtmoy's stuff.
Yeah, as well as these. This is infecting them with a disease too. And I believe monks get that too. I don't think it's as high of a level or as low of a level. It's at 10th level. Once again, just a spit in monks' faces for whatever reason.
And if you're fighting Zuggtmoy, you're at 10th, at least.
Yeah. So that's 2 classes that really get around a lot of these painful features. But that's not to say that, as we've mentioned, using these against your NPCs, against party members who don't have this, all useful options.
On the other side of things, violet fungus kind of suck.
Yep.
They have 5 feet of movement. They can make 1d4 rotting touch attacks, and it's +2 to hit, reach at 10 feet, and it does 1d8 necrotic damage. I don't know. I guess if you do 4 of those, that's okay. They're just so easy to avoid.
Yeah,
I'd rather just summon the gas spores.
It's also a lot scarier, the gas spores, but it's flavor. again, the flavor is there. The idea that these things just kind of pop up and there's more attacks against you. Action economy is still a thing, and even if only one of them hits, it's an additional 1d8 damage that's being done. Oh, it's 1d4 rotting touch attacks. So maybe you get a 4 one time.
Right.
It's scary to the players because you're rolling more dice. So
yeah, and they might not be aware that that's all it does. They're going to assume there's some terrible mind-affecting, soul-crushing, eating spores you're being infected with or something.
Right. So, right, as we're talking about with the gas spore, where it's like, yeah, blow it up and make them roll saves and have no idea what's happening. With this one, you're like, okay, it does 3 necrotic damage to you. And the party's like, and then what? You just go, oh, nothing. Just 3 damage.
Right.
So not everything has to be a world-ending event with every single monster. But yeah, most of the time I think you're better off doing the gas spores. But if your players are doing well and are doing poorly and you want to give them a chance, get some violet fungi. So next one is up to 4 plant creatures that are friendly to Zuggtmoy and that Zuggtmoy can use their reactions to move up to their speed and make 1 weapon attack. Weapon attack's a bit of a weird phrasing there because I guess does the violet fungus, that is a melee weapon attack. Okay.
Yeah, most of them are. Most like unarmed attacks count as like melee weapon attacks. I know there's that whole weirdness. We've talked about it so many times on the show. I don't want to go into it again. I can never keep it straight. But yeah, it covers a lot of things.
Yes. And it's not that impressive overall. I mean, it's just controlling the things that she already has control over. They can make an additional attack.
Right. And these are going to be, there's like no really strong plant creature. And these are most likely going to be like mycondids, which are not super impressive.
Yeah. I mean, like even the mycondid sovereign, which we're not going to spend the rest of this talking about the different mycondids that things can turn into, but a mycondid sovereign, which is the highest level mycondid that she can create, is like
or myconids. I'm sorry.
Myconid, whatever. I always mess that up. Myconid Sovereign is a challenge rating 2, and it has a lot of weird effects and everything, but damage-wise, it's not terrible. And there's no reason that she couldn't have a couple of these plant friends, to say the least.
Right. Actually, what is the highest challenge rating plant?
Probably the Vegapygmy, one of the higher level ones.
9. Challenge rating 9,
animated
corpse
flower.
Tree.
Oh, animated tree.
Yeah, and then there's like a Trent tree end.
Yeah,
Jeez.
there you go. I was waiting for it.
Yep. Yeah, challenge rating a corpse flower. So, I mean, there are stuff that could get up there.
And I could see having a corpse flower on the field be pretty cool, too.
Yeah. We did an episode on that.
We did.
That's an old one. That's an old one, yeah. Animated trees hit hard. Slam attacks, plus 10 to hit, 3d6 plus 6 bludgeoning damage.
Those are some of my favorite ones to run as minions in a fight, too. I did that with that ancient green dragon fight because they're so simple to run. I don't feel like I have to like learn an entire stat block for a minion.
Right.
And
so there's some options there.
Yeah, just not with the like creating 4 gas spores. That's not that interesting to have them attack. But then, last layer action, Zuggtmoy uses either her infestation spores or her mind control spores centered on a mushroom or other fungus within her lair instead of on herself. So just a way to spread out the love.
Yes. And actually, I forgot about this because I was saying, it's hard to justify not taking the multi-attack of 96 pseudopod damage. And here's a reason why. Yeah, you kind of don't need to. You can just do this anyways.
Right.
I wonder, I guess it's probably not beholden to the recharge.
Oh. Yeah, it doesn't say if available.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, you're in a layer, so that makes sense.
Yeah, that seems fair. One thing I was thinking about with that, and it kind of is in line with the, having this centered somewhere else, I really like the visual of Zuggtmoy, like, moving through the fungus, where it talks very much about how she's able to take on different forms and be whatever she needs to be. If you're like in her lair, I'm just imagining fungi everywhere. And so the idea of her like walking around doesn't seem fitting to me. I love the thought of like her, basically going into the ground and coming out 30 feet somewhere else, like moving around the battlefield, just wherever she needs to be, just sprouting up, basically.
Yeah, that's cool.
All right, last-ish, not even last. What am I talking about? Next, we have regional effects. So this is the region that is tainted by Zuggtmoy. And when we're talking about a layer, usually we're talking about a specific area. It's a little bit difficult when they have an entire plane dedicated to themselves. So once again, a good way to use this, if you've watched our 6 other Demon Lord videos, you've heard this every time. A good way to use this is if there is a portal that opens up to the material plane, consider that where the regional effects center from. So the first one is molds and fungi grow on surfaces within 6 miles of the layer, even where they would normally find no purchase. Then we have plant life within 1 mile of the layer becomes infested with a parasitic fungi, slowly mutating as it is overwhelmed. So that's cool, get some crazy plant life. And then if a humanoid spends at least 1 hour within 1 mile of the layer, that creature must succeed on a DC 17 wisdom saving throw or descend into a madness determined by the Madness of Zuggtmoy table. Creature that succeeds cannot be affected by this regional effect again for 24 hours. If Zuggtmoy dies, then it fades over the course of 1d10 days.
Nothing. I don't know. These ones actually I find kind of dull. Basically, everything gets covered in fungus.
Everything gets covered in fungus, and the plants are unruly. I agree. It's not that interesting.
No.
Especially with the lack of support around plant monsters. It's not like this isn't your big excuse as a DM to run all of the plants in the manual that have before made no sense to throw at your party. Is still just 7 things to choose from at most, and you can only fight so many corpse flowers before it gets boring.
Right.
And those madness effects, say we've talked every time, each Demon Lord gets their own specific table for madness that you will roll upon, and it is a D100 table. And we get, I see visions in the world around me that others do not. So great for mushrooms, if you're, psychedelic mushrooms. A lot of these seem like they have to do with being on drugs, to be honest. I periodically slip into a catatonic state, staring off into the distance for long stretches of time. Yeah, I see an altered version of reality, with my mind convincing itself that things are true even in the face of overwhelming evidence to the contrary. My mind is slipping away, and my intelligence seems to wax and wane. I take offense to that one. And then I am constantly scratching at unseen fungal infestations.
I hope that's not one of them.
That's in a bad state. Yeah, I mean, if the trip's not going well.
So these are, I think, a really good madness table because none of these are character ruining. Where we talked about a lot with madness, where a lot of them are just like everything needs to grind to a halt as you take care of it because one PC just starts killing and eating people at random. This one could go under the surface for a while, and
it never stops being funny. The idea of just and then I saw some weird shit and I started killing people and eating them. It's wow, that's a stretch.
But it doesn't feel like my character. Too bad. Rolled it on the madness table.
I totally agree, though. This is not character ending. It is flavor enhancing to the scene you are setting.
And it's also good because this is, of all the Demon Lords, this madness probably has the most mechanical implications with the infection and all that. So this is good because it can lay under the surface and you can develop it in NPCs, you can develop it in PCs, whatever.
Yep, and there's tons of that in Out of the Abyss. There was a really big thing where that's what a lot of these madnesses, I think the intent is, where it's it's her fungal spores gaining greater purchase, and it's you're no longer thinking right, you're starting to hallucinate because it's eating away at your brain, things like that.
Yeah, definitely. Though from that perspective, it doesn't make sense if you're immune to disease to have these things happen to you. But whatever. Right. I mean, there's other ways to gain madness as usual. So, let's just hand wave that. It doesn't matter.
Just give your paladins immunity to madness, too.
Yeah, why should paladins ever have issues? Paladins should walk through life just smiting, and that's it. Stop making paladins learn things like conditions and what a saving throw means. Just let them smite. So let's talk about some ways to use Zuggtmoy. It's just crickets. It's a bit of a weird one.
There's a lot of ways to go with it. Absolutely, she could be kind of the behind the scenes threat, enthralling people, taking over entire towns with her spores, that sort of thing, and needing to like fight through that and hunt her down. And because of that, you can't have a really wide, diverse array of monsters over an entire arc, over an entire campaign. It doesn't have to be plant stuff because you could just fudge the specifics of how mind control spores work and just say, on these NPCs, it's just permanent. Like, they are them with their abilities, but they are 100% under her control. And so you could kind of have anything, really. Yeah. You want the party to fight, have it make sense, have it play into whatever her greater ploy is, come up with some great big evil plan Zuggtmoy has, and the party needs to spend the entire campaign stopping it. She's one of those demon lords. She's not Yunobi, where it's just like, oh, go stop him, or like, you're being hunted, fight him.
Yeah, I think to some extent the theme would feel a little bit worn out after a while, potentially. But every time I think of a campaign, I think of 8 months to a year long. There's no reason it couldn't be a 3-month campaign where you are stopping Zuggtmoy and you fight a couple of cultists or whatever. I mean, it can go on as long as it makes sense to you. But it's all kind of laid out there. I don't have anything like with Inogu where it's like, oh, you get teleported to their plane and it's all this stuff you have to deal with. It's Zuggtmoy wants to probably come to the material plane or has started coming to the material plane in some capacity. And now it is up to the party to deal with that. They are going to uncover cults. They are going to uncover entire towns infected with the fungal spores, specific people who may have been infected. Honestly, if you need some inspiration, if you want to take things to like the fail state, The Last of Us, that's literally just fungus people infected. So you could play up that idea of towns that have been decimated and turned into basically zombies who are attacking people, and it's more of a survival situation. That actually is kind of neat. Starting a campaign where things have already failed. Zuggtmoy has taken over this region, and you all are basically in that region for whatever reason, and have to build up and fight against it.
Totally. So, for Out of the Abyss, used her in a really cool way, I thought. So for like inspiration's sake, I cover that. So I guess this is the obvious Out of the Abyss spoilers coming up, even though we've already peppered them in. But
yeah, this one's the major one. Everything else I feel like was important.
Yeah, here's like the plot synopsis of Zuggtmoy's arc and Out of the Abyss. So she was in the material plane in the Underdark, and she was looking to merge with, I never figured out how to properly say this, Raumycos, Raumycos, which is this massive world-spanning fungus. It exists as this neutral thing and has its tendrils all throughout the material plane everywhere, hundreds and thousands of miles underneath the surface of the earth. And she's looking to, quote-unquote, marry it, is how it's always framed. But it's really merge with it, corrupt it, and then use that to be able to then corrupt the rest of the world and take over. And as the players, have the option to stop it. And Out of the Abyss, just as written, I wasn't changing anything up, did a really good job of foreshadowing that throughout until you get to high enough level to deal with it, and then kind of ramping that up, because like I said, there's a lot of NPCs who are subtly infected by her spores throughout, which if you kind of push and prod and look into things, you'll start realizing some of it. If not, it just goes unnoticed and you're being kind of manipulated along the way. The mycondids, who are a big part of Out of the Abyss, are very much under their influence because they have like rapport spores and they communicate through spores and telepathic spores. So they're really susceptible to Zuggtmoy. So they're all like, not all of them, but a lot of them are like her thralls. And they're gathering to her, to where she is, where the kind of the base of this giant fungus thing is, and planning this wedding and the ceremony, gathering supplies for it, and you go there to disrupt it.
Yeah, so that's, I think, taking it and saying, how could this be an arc to a campaign? Obviously, that's specifically in a written one, but taking that idea of Zuggtmoy has a plan and has infected, mushroom people, you can just lift that entirely and put it in your campaign if you want to.
Right.
And it's
totally
a great thing to play out. Just feels very alien, that idea of dealing with fungus people, for one. The myconids are super weird. Myconids? My gosh.
Myconids, yeah. There's only one D.
I'm going to put
it's myconids.
Yeah, it's the myconids are super weird. And I think that alone was really fun to deal with as a player, to meet these mushroom people who have this extremely different culture that is super alien to anything human. And then from there, having to, decidedly help them, because what else are you going to do? Let the Demon Lord take over. Was very fun to play out, and I think it's easy enough for any DM to take and put in their game.
Totally. Yeah, and the Mike and Ike's have, because they're somewhat already using spores and mushroom creatures, their impact of getting taken over is different. They're not like becoming brain dead thralls type deal. They just kind of all of a sudden like switch their alignment and become like in love with Zuggtmoy and all about Zuggtmoy. And so they're really happy and cheery through all of this, which is this really creepy thing. And if you recall, at one point early on, you find like a Myconid's village, and like they're in this. There's this fight between two like leaders going on, and one is like barricading themselves in the back area and not letting anyone in, and it turns out they've been infected and are slowly infecting everyone else, and you fight your way in, and there's all these horrors there of like non-myconid species they've brought in there who have been planted into the ground to turn into fungal zombies, and everything's corrupted and goopy and covered in mold and stuff like this. There's also a song for this. Do you remember me singing you this song?
I try to forget it, but
here it is again. So this is it's a random encounter as you're in the early stages of Out of the Abyss. You're like going through the Underdark. You run into like a troop of Myconids going to Zuggtmoy, cheerily singing the song. And so, like, out of context, it makes no sense, and it just kind of seems like this fun thing. They try to get you to dance with them, and if you do that, then you have to make saves about coming under the effects of the spores. And the one NPC, the Drow, wants to leave with them. I don't know if you remember all that, but all right. Oh, from rocky bed the toadstool rose, from chaos dark her love she knows. Wish, yearn, laugh, the lady will be wed. Crave, hunger, dance, her joyous spores will spread. Youth is gone, beauty rots her. It falls apart at this point. Rumpkiss and Zuggtmoy, joined together, heart to hearts, becoming one till death do part. Hail, hail, hail. This is where you applaud.
Oh, yeah.
That chapter was a trip.
It super was. You really committed to that. I appreciate it. I don't have a follow-up. Is that the end of the episode?
I think so.
Do we have any other songs?
I don't have too many mushroom songs, sadly.
No. No, it's... I like it because it's one of those things where like you hear it and it's just like, oh, this is a weird zany thing, and you don't connect anything dark to it, but it's insanely dark, and it spoils the entire arc. But like it's kind of done in this cryptic way, and just you don't pick up on it.
Right, and it's not like anybody is going to sit there
cool things
and write down what is said. They're going to hear it and go, oh, that was super weird. And then 3 weeks later in real life, they're actually dealing with it. And maybe one of them goes, wasn't that song mentioning something about a wedding? And you, as the DM, probably say, oh, yeah, you roll an intelligence check. You remember a couple of words. And it all pieces together.
Right. And it does a good job of setting the tone of that kind of weird juxtaposition of like people just like hysterically, manically happy as they're being taken over by fungal rotten spores and turning into these horrid creatures.
And I think that's actually probably the most important distinction for role-playing and setting up Zuggtmoy is making her more whimsical than the other ones. Like, Jubilix is a mindless acid horror, just wants to dissolve everything. This is an alien creature that has weird desires, like marrying this world fungus. That's just, it's darkly comical. And I think that's a really just fun way to play it.
Yeah, definitely. Mm-hmm. And I don't know how to bring this up in context, but it's just always good to mention. There's that like fungus that infects ants' brains where they like climb up grass stalks. It like overtakes their brain. They climb up the grass. They get eaten by cows and then like basically spread.
That they could reproduce in their stomach,
Yeah.
Or birds or something, yeah.
Yeah.
They're called
Or
cordyceps.
the toxoplasmosis that makes rats and mice seek out cats. Because this is a parasite that can only reproduce in the stomach of a cat.
Right.
Yeah, just weird stuff like that.
So I don't know how that fits within context of this. It's just that fungus is super cool. And...
Well, that's just not fungus. Those are parasites.
Cordyceps are fungal.
Yeah, cordyceps are fungal. Not that I knew the name, but yes, those ones are fungal. And anything that just takes over another creature's mind is horrifying, and there are tons of examples in nature. So if you're not entirely sure where to start, that's always a good option. You know, think of it.
And there's like a really cool picture in the very back of Out of the Abyss of a drow spore servant with the fungus bursting out like a crown in the top of his head. Yeah. And I remember you
That's your
describing
NPC
that. Yeah, it was like brutal. Just skull cracked open, brain gone. Now it's just a big mushroom antenna.
Now I want that picture. Can you find that in Out of the Abyss and put it up?
Yeah,
for the video?
definitely put it on the video. I can send it in the chat later. Yeah. But yeah, I got nothing else on this one.
Nope. No, so that's all I wanted to end with is the idea of, you know, looking towards nature, the idea of Zuggtmoy infecting things to have them gather at some specific place for whatever her goals are is a great arc that is very easy to run. So the inspiration floweth. And
you know what else is really easy to run?
What's that?
Your sessions when you use Bardly.
Oh my gosh, what does Bardly do?
It allows you to play music. So for online sessions, everyone gets a link and it's connected to the same music server. Everyone can control their own volume and stuff like that, and it plays for everybody.
Oh, and what, the DM just controls what I listen to?
Yes.
Wow, that sounds really helpful.
It does. Yeah, I know they have like moods and intensities you could set. You use it more than me, Jared.
I know, but you started it, so I was letting you go. But yeah, it does. I think everything you said sums it up. I absolutely love Bardly. I use it for every single one of my sessions because I think music is extremely important in setting a tone with your games. It's an easy way to get people into a mindset, and Bardly kind of takes the guesswork out of it so that I'm not sitting on YouTube trying to look up what the perfect song is for this moment. If they're going into a lively tavern, I press the lively tavern button, and just like that, everybody feels it. We're immersed, and the game keeps going. I do not like technology that gets in the way of a D&D session. Bardly is not one of those. It enhances it seamlessly. So if you want to get 50% off your first 3 months, you can use the code MNM50. Minimum 50. And helps out the show, and you get to try out an awesome product. And I think you can use the 14-day trial before even doing the subscription. So, like, do that, and then once you're happy with it, then use our code, and you've got 3.5 months just, like, real cheap. So, Bardly.
Yeah.
And as usual, if you enjoyed the show, which I guess maybe we should say this earlier every single time, like, comment, subscribe. It helps us very much. The algorithm needs fed, and if you do that, we get to spread our spores out into the universe, which in turn gives us serotonin. The only reason we do this is for serotonin. Please help us. We have very few other ways to get it. And as usual, thank you to our patrons: Luca L, Brian H, Craig A, Bob F, Ed G, Adam A, Star Shinobi, Sentinel D20, Isaac M, Vincent M, Joe P, and Jeff W. You all are amazing, and your support of the show gives us serotonin. See, it all comes back to that. And also helps us buy new equipment, grow the show, do all of those things. So thank you so much.
And as always, thanks for watching.